All right, so far we have spotlighted some of the challenges at the Port Authority and how to maybe reform the agency's structure and to many degrees culture as well. But the question is, does the Port Authority's mission also need a review? Now, the Port Authority owns a World Trade Center site, among other things, and is being asked to guarantee more than $1 billion in loans for the rebuilding of 3 World Trade, even though there may not be enough renters to fill out the building. Should the Port Authority be, in effect, a real estate owner, or should the agency's mission actually expand? Port Authority doesn't operate the Pulaski Skyway, which takes traffic primarily to and from the Holland Tunnel. Should highways like that one be added to the agency's mission? You know, before the show, and I was looking at some of the assets that come under the Port Authority's heading, I thought I knew this, but I was surprised at some of the things that you guys control. But the idea that you guys would have to underwrite, basically guaranteeing some loans here for World Trade Center 3, it just strikes me as, why is that in the best interest of the Port Authority? Is that really the business you guys ought to be in? When you look at the portfolio, do you think it's incomplete, or do you think there's too much in it?
Well, as you know, I personally strongly opposed and publicly opposed the construction of World Trade Center 3 with public money.
Yep.
I support the fact that we jump-started the project with a $7.7 billion Port Authority investment in the transportation center and the infrastructure to rebuild it. It's a monument to the world, in the world. It has the greatest significance. But at this point, World Trade Center 3 would be basically a private sector project. When the market is ready for it, it will be fully financed by the private sector. If the developer would give up a portion of his equity when he doesn't get government financing, then he would be able to get the financing, just as Related got the financing by giving up equity on Hudson Yards.
Should the Port Authority be in the real estate business, in the airport business, or should it retract and focus on core transportation mission?
Well, I personally believe that we have a constrained budget for all of the infrastructure transportation needs that we have in the region, and that our entire focus should be on transportation. The Port Authority is going to be selling off a lot of its real estate. I personally think eventually the World Trade Center could be part of that portfolio for sale in long term. I would favor that. And all of the proceeds should be used for transportation. We need money beyond the $28 billion capital budget that we just announced for improvements of the infrastructure. We need a lot more. We need money for improved Kennedy Airport. We need money for a new bus terminal.
So narrow the mission and focus on transportation.
That is really going to be the focus. It was the focus assigned to the agency by Congress when it was created, and mission creep invaded the Port Authority, and now we are putting a stop to it.
Has the rebuilding of the World Trade Center site contributed to or been directly responsible for the toll increases on the Hudson River crossings? There's a lot of talk that the cost of one World Trade Center has led to, $13 tolls to cross the Hudson.
I personally believe it did not impact, I wasn't there at the time, but it did not impact the toll increases. The toll increases are much more impacted by the fact that tolls and airport fees are pretty much the exclusive revenue source to cover the deficit operations, such as the Path Railroad or the buses. So that what really impacted the toll increase is the transportation deficit, the need to put a huge amount of new investment into signals and at Path and refurbishing it.
You know that when they announced the toll increase, the Port Authority said the revenues would go to some extent to the real estate deals, right?
No. Well, Richard, inevitably a certain trickle will go to it, but the World Trade Center is financed by bonds, and that's a long-term capital expenditure. The tolls, yes, indeed, they are the base on which bonds are allocated to the Port Authority, and why we have a AA credit rating that allows us to borrow. But the tolls are really operating funds The airport fees are operating funds. The income on our concessions are operating funds, and that does go to support the transportation mission. Nevertheless, we don't want to use up our debt capacity on real estate deals like World Trade Center 3, because we need that debt capacity for transportation infrastructure.
You did very well stopping the credit enhancement deal, Ken.
Thank you.
You went public.
Thank
You
you.
picked a fight. You won. Those tolls are going for real estate deals, and it's got to stop.
Well, I can assure you, while I'm on the board, those tolls will not go for real estate deals. I think bringing World Trade Center 3 to the public and raising the issue publicly was very healthy for the Port Authority. It ended secrecy. It brought it into the public arena. The press got involved very constructively in highlighting what the issues were, such as the ones we're discussing. And I think it made the directors sharpen their own thoughts on what the mission of the Port Authority is. And going forward,
You're
I
going to get
believe
out
it
of
was
the
very
airport business,
constructive.
you think?
I personally don't think we're going to get out of the airport business. One of the key reasons that we shouldn't get out of the airport business is because the airport fees, for landing fees for planes, not only supports the physical structure of the airports and the runways, each one of which costs $300 million to build, but it also is the basis on which we're able to get money for the losing operations. You would not be able to support PATH, which has a $300 million annual deficit, or the bus terminals.
Real quick, I'm sorry, Don. The president's here on Wednesday. He's going to be at the Tappan Zee Bridge, and he's going to be talking about infrastructure, not just on that crossing, but the need for infrastructure improvements nationally. You've looked at your own structures. You've probably seen some internal numbers. Is there going to need to be significant capital expenditures when you're looking at crossings and you're looking at some of the core infrastructure needs that we have right now of existing? Is it worse than maybe the public thinks, how much money you're going to have to dump into these things?
It is much worse than the public thinks on a national basis and on a regional basis as well. You have more demands on the future capital budget beyond the $28 billion budget that we recently announced.
Yep.
And that also goes for critical infrastructure. Remember, a large part of the money spent on infrastructure is for good repair, safety, maintenance.
Yep.
So a big chunk of the infrastructure budget of the $28 billion goes to keep things going the way they are, let alone new things. And then we need a lot of new things. We didn't build Kennedy Airport to support 500-person planes coming in. That all has to be built out now. So that's a whole new thing. People can't be waiting 2-3 hours to get through narrow customs halls. So all of that has to be built out. We have a bus terminal that was built in 1964. It's been the fastest growing means of transportation in the region.
Really?
Buses, yes. And as a consequence, we have 235,000 people a day going through the bus terminal. 65 million people a year use it. And we have an ancient bus terminal, and we need a new one, and that's a $1 billion
Dominic,
project.
you wanted to make a quick point?
The only point I wanted to make, with all due respect, because we can tell how much you care about the agency, but I am telling you that this is really scary with the Port Authority. And it's scary because we've heard from your own mouth that the only regulatory agency is the board. This is the same board where the director just pushed through contracts to benefit some of his law firm clients. This is the same board, or for no matter how well-intentioned you might be, you're not going to vote against the interests of the governor that gave you your job.
I hate to say it, but he's right.
I know I'm right.
I hate to disagree.
Why would a governor be incentivized to change the status quo when he or she, gets to put in their own guys?
Because I can just tell you, as the Governor Cuomo told me personally when I first went on the board, he said this is a really critical agency because they have the money and we need to make sure the money is used to enhance the economy and infrastructure of the region.
And the other point,
that is the best regulation.
I understand what you're saying, but the other point, Richard, from a journalistic point of view, where does all this money go? I mean, I know it's peanuts when you hear about Port Authority employees driving government cars and so on.
That's peanuts.
But I know it's peanuts.
You're doing very well.
I know it's peanuts, but when you add it all up, The average guy watching the show tonight doesn't have a car paid for by the
If you
Port
were
Authority.
right about the governors, why did they go through that silly song and dance on the toll increase where everyone was told, we'll announce it's at $15 and you'll come back and say
Yeah.
13? Come on, Ken.
I wasn't there, and I'm not familiar with the politics of that decision in terms of how it was presented. But from a fundamental point of view, I know Governor Cuomo, and I don't know Governor Christie, but I understand from his deputy director they just appointed, they're focused totally on the mission now, and they're focused totally on building transportation infrastructure, and they're totally focused on reform
Well, I can promise you much.
at the Port
They're not going to
Authority.
screw around and try and shut down any more lanes. That much I can tell you for sure. Hey, Ken.
There's gambling in Castle
thank
We
you
don't
very
blame the
much.
messenger. In fact, we wish you the best of luck.
Thank you.
And hopefully the other actors are on the same page with you as well. Okay, everyone, we'll be right back with more RFL right after.